Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Cat B Making Connections show. I've got the Daisy May in the house today. Give everybody a wave, Daisy. Tell everybody about yourself, Daisy. I've known you for a few years now. Quite a character.
But can I first just tell them why I'm wearing sunglasses so they don't think that I'm cool? Okay, so I'm wearing sunglasses because I had my cataracts done the last few months and I've got light sensitivity at the moment. So that's why I'm wearing sunglasses, not because I'm cool. I just want to say that. So where do I start? So let's start at the very beginning. That's the place to start. Okay, so if we start at the very beginning, it's when I started communicating as a child with the spirit world. I didn't realize it was a spirit world. To me, it was just a connection with what my parents called my invisible friends. And I used to tell them things that freaked them out a bit, but there you go. And I learned to deal with it until I got into my teenage years, and I didn't really want it because the Osmonds and the Bay City Rollers were more important than the spirit world to me then. So, showing my age now. So I think I was about 18 or 19 when it first started coming back to me. And then I just knew things. I knew things without being told. And I started playing with tarot cards. And then one day, I think it was about 2 years after I was doing tarot cards and I was doing reading with tarot cards, something just told me I didn't need the cards anymore and to put them away. And I actually gave them to somebody. I gave them to someone. And then I started doing readings from about 1987. I did all my readings as gift readings. I had a charity box at one stage where people could put a couple of quid or a fiver in and I'd give it to charity in my son's memory because I lost a son as a baby. And things just sort of went on from there, really. And I've enjoyed it. I've done nursing as well for a long time.
So you were a natural born medium. You've had no training whatsoever.
No. It's you know it as well because you've seen me do this. I'm a remote viewer as well, so where spirit will come to me and doesn't matter where the person is in the world that I'm reading via video link, I can tell them, even though I might, like you see me with just the curtain behind me, I will be able to tell them all about their house, their spirit family, whoever I'm talking to will walk me around their house, room to room. They'll tell me what colour car's on the drive, and I'll say, oh, you have this coloured car on the drive and where it's parked, reversed in or driven in. Tell me their gardens and what their gardens look like. And sometimes I can do two houses at the same time. So I might have a spirit energy in one house, which say is the mother's house. And I'm doing a reading, say, for a lady that's lost a son or a daughter. And I will get two houses together almost. And I can go through both at the same time. I love doing that. I can be anywhere. I have helped with a few missing people as well. That I've really enjoyed. And I was contacted by somebody. Do you remember the young lady that went missing in America? Turned out her boyfriend had done it, and she'd been stopped by the police already and asked, did she want to, not be with him? I don't know if you remember that one. I helped with that. I actually saw where she was and everything, and I helped passed on messages to her mother there. And I don't charge for that.
Wow, amazing.
And I have helped a couple of police things that I've helped mainly in America where I've been contacted. Those I can't talk about because they asked me not to, but I can say that much.
Amazing.
And so, yes, I really love working with spirit, and I love that they're funny. I love it when they show their sense of humor and they bring up memories that that can't be known anywhere.
Favorite? What's your favorite? Was your old?
Well, I can tell you one that springs to mind straight away. So I did a reading for a lady last year from England, and I said to her that her dad had come into the reading that passed many years ago. And this lady was my age now. And I said to her, your dad said he knows when you were 14 and the red Mini that you crashed. And she went, he knows? He knows? And I said, yes. And she said, oh my God. She said, I can't believe it. So I said, you crashed a red Mini at 14? And she said, well, Daisy, what happened was my neighbour had left her keys in her red Mini back in the 70s, not a problem, yeah? And I thought, oh, I can drive this. So she said, I'd never have a driving lesson in my life, but I got in it, turned the engine. Of course, it started moving, but I didn't know how to stop it until it hit a fence. She said, and I just got out and ran off, and no one knew it was me. They thought it had been stolen. And that come out in a reading. That to me was so I like it when they do that. They bring up things.
Quite unusual, unique pieces
Yes.
of information, very
Yeah.
evidential.
And when I do remote viewing, sometimes spirit will be funny, because if you're anything like me, I always wear something nice on the top, but sometimes I can have my PJ bottoms on when I'm doing a reading. No one knows. I've got something casual on. No one knows, but I'm sharing that now. And I can be doing a reading, and spirit will have fun with the person that I'm reading and say, tell my mum she's wearing the fluffy socks right now, and she's wearing dad's pajama bottoms or something like that, and they do exactly the same. And they go, how do you know these things? And I say, because your loved one is with you right now, and they want to prove it in the reading. I love it when they do that. It can be so amazing.
Really cool.
I also love with spirit, and of course you've seen me at work, Kat, you know how I work. I like spirit to share things that can't be known again by, say, for example, someone comes in and they say, tell my mum Wednesday. Well, Wednesday was the day that they passed. Tell my mum Saturday. And then normally say, well, that's the day they were born. They can give me the time they passed. And I've got a few videos on my Facebook page where people have allowed me to record their readings. And one lady I did a reading for, her son showed me that he went missing, but he showed me that he was in a car and that he had been put there. He was already passed, but he was put in the driver's seat. And he also told me that when the police opened the car, they could smell clean, like someone had just cleaned it with bleach, because it had all been cleaned. But he told me that's not where he passed. That's where he was put. And he also told me that people were driving past and didn't know he was there because they parked the car, whoever did that, parked the car behind like a tree. So he was aware people were going past. I know he'd passed, but he's explaining that. And that was amazing. That was, again, and that was a gift reading.
And she was able to validate the information about the clean.
Oh, yeah, you can see the video on my thing. And the lovely thing about that reading was I gave that lady a gift reading via an email, which was in Skype, and I didn't even know her name to the moment of the reading. And that was great. And she says that, and I said, I actually say to her, do you know, I don't know your name? And she told me her name, because obviously I want to speak to her to a name. And then we started talking. It was a 30-minute gift reading. But I love doing that. But you've been the experience of my readings when we went out. When was it your father-in-law? Your father-in-law, wasn't it? We were just enjoying a meal, weren't we, in Braintree Village?
That's right.
And suddenly he just came in, didn't he? And that was it. And came in his kilt. I remember that.
He's a Scotsman for sure.
That's right, yeah. And it was so you've actually seen me do that. I love it when animals come in as well. I also communicate with people that have got full-on dementia or Alzheimer's. So again, there is another example of that on my page so what happens is, I just be doing a reading for whoever I'm doing a reading for. And I say to them, I have your mum here. And they say, my mum's not passed. And I said, has your mum got dementia or Alzheimer's? And they say, yes. And I said, well, she is here, because they can communicate to me. And so can nonverbal children as well communicate, and so can animals. And again, there's a perfect example of it on my page where 40 minutes we did this reading, where her mum is talking about all this stuff, people that she's with in spirit, but she's living and breathing in this world, but she has full-on Alzheimer's. She actually said she didn't like, no, this was another gentleman I did, where he told Sandra, his daughter, through me, and he was living still with Alzheimer's. He said, will you tell Sandra that the reason why I'm losing weight and I'm not eating is I have a bad tooth? So she went back and she told the carers that's looking after him, can you take him to the dentist? And true enough, yeah, needed a tooth removing, and then he went back to eating again. And he also said that there was a carer he didn't like because she was too rough when she washed his face. And it was all this sort of stuff. And he just, I just love it when they do it. I, I never know who's going to come in on a first time reading, and I just go with the flow. I can get up to 12 energies in 1 hour reading, depending on who's coming in, you know. And like I say, I love it when the animals come in as well, and they can share how they passed and their favorite toys and stuff like that.
I was telling one of my students, I was like, recently I've been reading a lot of cats. I think maybe because my name's Cat, people come to me because of the cat connection. I mean, I do adore cats, so it is kind of
Yeah.
cool, but I've spent a whole hour just doing a reading on a cat. And it's
Mm.
amazing what they will tell you in terms of the level of detail about their owners and what they've observed, things that have happened to them, or kind of habits that they have that are unique to them, or places that they will sit. Like there was a lady the other day, and I was like, your cat wants to go out into the garden to the right hand side, and there's a tree there, and it likes to curl up in the roots of that tree. But that was, he says that's his favorite spot. So there's, you think, in terms of soul to soul connection, it's the same, isn't it, Daisy?
Yeah, but also what I've noticed is, as we're talking, other thoughts are coming in my head about this. I've done a few readings where people have been adopted, and I've had all the families on both sides come in, even though they didn't know their biological parents. And they only learnt about their biological parents once they turned 18 or something. And they'd come in. And I also did a reading. And again, I just say what I get from spirit. And this lady said that her mother had said that she needed to do her DNA, like her ancestry DNA. You might find something interesting. I said, have you ever thought about doing that? And she said, no, not really. So she said, but I think I will. Do you know that she came back to me like months and months later to say, she said, do you remember my mum said, do your DNA, you might find it out something interesting. And I said, I didn't actually remember it because I don't remember readings. I read too many people. I said, I didn't remember that. And she said, well, let me tell you, I found out that my dad is not my dad, but my dad's brother is my dad. And that's what her mum was telling her. You might find out something interesting.
Was the uncle still alive, Daisy?
Sorry?
Was the uncle still alive?
No, they weren't alive. No.
Wow.
But yeah.
How did she integrate that? Because that's quite a shock to your system. Did she tell anybody else?
No, she said that she always felt she was different. She's one of 5 children and she's the youngest, but she always felt that she was just slightly treated differently. Yeah. And she had sort of a love-hate relationship with her mum. But her mum didn't tell her that to be nasty. I think her mum wanted to, I think maybe whatever was going on, but she questioned stuff, or I think one of her sisters teased her and said, well, you don't look like us. I think you're, and it sort of went from there. But yeah, that came in.
Oh, that's really
I
amazing.
know. Yeah.
What's been the most sensitive situation that because emotion, we were talking off camera about emotions, and it's very difficult, isn't it, when you're a bereaved mum yourself and you have come through this process in a very natural way. You strike me as somebody who's very empathetic. You're somebody that will, I mean, I don't think you bawl or scream or cry on camera.
No, I don't go to that extent. My thing is, I lost my mum when I was 10, and we were actually put in children's homes when she died because my dad couldn't look after us until he remarried. That was a hard time. I went through a lot of bullying and some nasty stuff, and that was difficult. So I think also losing my son, my second son, when I was 21, that was a really hard situation for me because I'd only lost my mum 11 years previous. And you think the pain of losing your mum is very different from the pain of losing a child. That's one thing I will say. They're both so meaningful, but I can't describe unless people know it when you've lost a child. And my son was full term and lived 4 days with half a heart. As you know, I think I've told you this, he died the same day John Lennon was shot. It was, most people remember that day, you know.
And I think that's why my father-in-law connected to you, because he actually transitioned on the day that John Lennon died as well, which is
wow.
bit uncanny.
Yeah. And my son's name was Mark, and the person that killed John Lennon was also called Mark. But I named my son obviously days before that happened. And also John Lennon's birthday is the 9th of October. That's my eldest brother's birthday as well. It's funny how you know, like, just things come. But I started doing nursing in 1984 when I was 24. Me and my husband just got married. So I started doing nursing. I did psychiatry for 4 years. And then I left to have our youngest son. When I went back to work in 1990, I did general nursing. That was an eye opener because I started working with maternity. They were pretty good with me because I said I couldn't deal with anybody having a baby that was going to be stillborn, and I preferred never to work in the labour wards. I never wanted that because I knew I have a limit, if you know what I mean, to what I can do. And worked on the children's ward. Then I did surgical, medical, special care baby. Then I worked in A&E. So I did a lot of things. That was at Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow. And then I went from there and I wanted to do palliative. That's really hard because you're working with patients that have got 12 weeks or less to live, and some of them live longer than that. That's where, again, the emotion comes into it because you're dealing with people at end of life, basically.
Interesting, Daisy, that your last job in nursing is in palliative care and about
Yeah,
end of life care. They literally took you into that space to
yeah,
prepare you.
yeah. And my last job was in 2018 was my last job looking after a lady in her own, because I used to like doing the private nursing as well because of one-to-one. I loved that. And I knew that there were changes because I was already doing work with spirit, but only part-time then, because I couldn't do both full time, you know. And so when 2018, this lady I knew was going to pass, I said to Spirit, look, if you want me to do this spiritual work, these readings full time, lead me the way. Lead me the way. I can't do both. And I haven't looked back since 2018. So it just means I went on to be able to do more, you know, and work with Spirit. What I would say to people is, for anyone to say that you can't show emotion as a medium, I think that's utter rubbish, because how can you not when you've been through difficult times in your life and you're dealing with people that are going through exactly what you've been through? I'm not saying I boo-hoo and I'm crying out loud. I get choked, yeah? And when I had a lady that lost her baby in when my son, it was 5 years ago, because my son would have been 40, and she just lost her baby to a hypoplastic left heart, which is what my son died of. And I said to her, why getting 1980? She said, oh, that's when I was born. So I said, you were born December as well? She said, yeah. And I said, you weren't born on the 5th of December, were you? And she said, yes, I was. Why'd you say it? And I said, because you were born the same day that my son was born to a hypoplastic left heart, and you just lost your child to the same thing. What are the chances of that? That's my son guiding and supporting me there, and bringing things up, you know. But I find it at times like that, for me, that's hard, because suddenly I'm dealing with someone exactly the same age who's now 40 years old when my son would have been 40, and I'm talking to her, born the same day as my son, and she's just lost a child to the same, you know. I also lost a nephew, Aaron. He died in 1988. He hung himself. He was 11 years old through being bullied at school. So again, I speak to people that have lost through suicide. And something I've always said way back, I remember saying this to my sister when it happened. And I said, she was worried that he hadn't gone home to spirit. And I said to her, you know what, Chris, just remember when you go back home to spirit, even those that passed a suicide, they're going back no different to someone that passes in a car accident, cancer, you know, an illness. They go back home the same way. Don't let anyone tell you different, you know, because people will say, you know, for religious reasons, for example, that it doesn't, but it's not true. You know, it's not true. They go through like that. Can I tell you, the first person I ever did a reading for within 40 minutes of her passing, and again, it's all on my page, was for Terry's daughter. So Terry, she's called, her daughter had cancer, and her daughter was talking to me for a while about a year before she died. She knew she was going to die. And I said to her one day, do you have a bucket list? Because I'd love to sort something out for you. And she said she does. She'd love to do family days out. So between me and a very good contact with me, I got her put up in a lovely stately home where she went to Wiltshire, she went to Stonehenge, she went to, is it Longleat? I think that's there as well. And everything was paid for and everything for, and we did that. So when she passed away, I got this feeling, I remember I was here and I got a feeling that I need to contact Terry. So I said, Terry, is everything all right with Jess? And she said, no, Daisy's transitioning really fast right now. And I said, because she's here with me, she's letting me know. I said, are you in a, you're in a hospice with her right now? And she said, yes. And I said, look, I'll leave you for a little while, but I'm here. We only text one another. Now, 50 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes late, she messaged me to say that Jess has just passed. So I said, she's here. I said, is she wrapped up, or have you put a purple blanket over her at the moment? And she said, yes. So I said, she's with your mum, and your mum contacted her. And I said, hang on, I said, you've just had a nurse come into your room. And I said, is she Chinese? And she went, yeah. And I said, Jess is there, but someone interrupted us. It was a Chinese nurse just coming in to make sure if Terry wanted. It's all on my Facebook page. Terry goes with the story and everything. I said, Jess is going now with your mum. But I said, she just turned her back, looked over her left shoulder and waved at you. And Terry said, I can't tell you what that means. She said, let me tell you something. When Jess got her cancer, for the last 5 years, she's never been able to look over her left shoulder because her cancer was all here. So she could never look over her left shoulder. So when she did that and waved at me, looking over her left shoulder, that was her way of telling me, I'm fine, Mum. That really gets me to this day, that does.
Really beautiful. That's really.
But there's so many, I mean, my page on there is, I think I started it in 2012 or something. And I always ask people's permission. I never put anything without asking people's permission. If they don't want anything up, I never put anything. A lot of people just automatically will write stuff and add it on my page, but I will only always ask permission first. But yeah, it's just amazing. They're just amazing. It just goes to show it, they're just here, aren't they? They're just
right in front of you. Right.
Yeah.
You know, I was always amazed, like when we went for dinner and you literally just, we weren't even going to read for one another. You just sat there and suddenly you got this connection. It was straight in, and it was very genuine. You didn't know the information about me. It was very healing, therapeutic at the time.
We were just sat there catching up, weren't we, in the shopping centre?
Yeah, we were.
And we just ordered our food. I remembered, and I suddenly went, hang on a minute, there's a guy here and he's in a kilt. I remember that. And it was crazy. And then it went from there, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It's funny, isn't it? It's funny. What's your favourite memory?
I've got too many. I've got so many. I suppose certain ones stick out. So I went in 2011, I went to Graceland. My husband treated me. It was a surprise for our wedding anniversary. And went to
It's fair to say you love Elvis, don't you?
No, I wouldn't say. No, do you know, when he passed away, I was 17 and I was still an Osman fan. Do you know what I mean? So I remember going to work and all these girls were crying. And I said, what are you crying for? They said, because Elvis died. And I went, but he was old. He wasn't old. He was 42, but I was 17. So to me, he was old, which is, that's just being a kid. I was actually got more interested in his music much later on. I'd say much later on, maybe into the 80s. And I thought I started like listening to his music and that. But I decided I wanted to go. My husband said it's just on, like a bucket list, like we all have as we get older. And so we were there for a week. And every day we used to go up to the meditation gardens. It opens at 7:30 every morning for 1 hour. You go to the meditation gardens, then it closes. Every day for the first 3 days, my husband kept going, have you got him yet? And I went, no. Have you got him yet? I went, no. And then on the 4th day, I noticed there was an English couple. We started talking to them and I said, I'm just going to go and sit in front of Elvis's grave. And my husband was talking to them. But what was crazy was we were living in Epping there. And this couple were from Harlow. It's like, like 8 miles from where we live. And so we met them in Graceland.
Exactly.
And suddenly Elvis came to me, and all I did was stand up, shout my husband's name. I went, Danny. And I did that so I know that he knew what that meant. But I will never forget that. It was amazing. It's just the way he came, the way he was dressed. He looked about 32. He was with his family and stuff. He was just so lovely. So I've had a few situations. I've had John Lennon coming. But to me, you see, people have got to remember they're not famous in the spirit world. It was just their job here. Nobody's famous. Only people make people famous here, but we're not. We're all the same. And when we go back home to spirit, we're just, as you know, just spirit energies. Just like the Queen, she had a job to do here. When she went home, she's just transitioned back home to spirit. And another one I had was Paul Walker. So my son loved Paul Walker. He's a petrol head, he was. And he had a sticker on the back of his car that said, Paul Walker, 1961, I think it was 2013 he died. I nearly got you, almost got you. It's a sticker. Thought nothing more about it. We went to his sister's and near St Albans where they lived at Radlett. Coming back, I was driving back in my car. The M25 got shut and we got diverted. This was before we had a sat nav. Didn't know where the heck we were going. And I just followed what everybody else was doing until I recognised Hatfield. And then I knew where I was going. I could get on the 414. Came out of this side road. And I just said to my son before we joined the dual carriageway, I said to my son, Kieran, can a car skid on engine oil? Right? And he said, Mum, what made you say that? What do you know? We were talking about something else. What made you say that? And I said, well, you're never going to believe this, but I've got Paul Walker sat in the back of the car. And he's saying his crash happened due to engine oil and sliding on engine oil or something. And I said, I knew nothing about Paul Walker. I'd never watched any of those films because I'm not into racing cars like, they were, that my son was. And I said, oh, he's telling me stuff. And some of the stuff Kieran knew, some of it he didn't. And I said, he's saying I've got to talk about, I don't know why he's showing me a field. I said, he's showing me a field. And then he corrected me and said, no, it's not a field, Daisy. It's meadow. And I said, I always said meadow. And my son went, that's his daughter's name, Mum. She's called Meadow.
Oh, wow.
And then other things were said, things I can't even remember now. And then Kieran said to me, Mum, can I ask him a question? I said, yeah, don't say it out loud. Ask him in your mind and I'll see what he replies. So he asked, and I said, have you asked a question? He went, yeah. And so I said, let me see if he replies. I said, well, this don't make sense really, but he's showing me the back of your car with the sticker that you've got in his memory. He said, Mum, that's what I just asked him. Does he like the sticker on the back of my car? And so he's come to me twice and amazing times. I mean, this person I would never have known, but somehow the connection, and it doesn't matter how far, where time is, how far we are apart, where these things happen.
I've
You
got,
know,
I've got a crazy one. I knew a
yeah,
lady for a year, and I didn't know that she had a connection to a rock star. I'd known her for a year and this young man came through and made himself aware very sort of lightly in the first reading. And then another lady, completely unconnected, Daisy, got sent. I was like, gosh, this young man in spirit feels familiar. He feels like this young man that came through to this lady, but they don't seem to know each other. They're not connected. They're living in different areas of the world. They've got different backgrounds. When he came for the second girl, he absolutely adored. You could tell he was quite a character. He was doing impressions. He was laughing. He was doing sort of joking and messing around. Well, this guy, he then sends several friends from different locations all over the world, none of which know how they've got my details really. They've all got them quite randomly. And they're all connected to this young man I'd never, he claimed my music taste was terrible, Daisy. I didn't even know Led Zeppelin were a British band. That's how bad I was. But he was a big Led Zeppelin fan. So he was like, you are going to have to learn. I'm here to educate you about music is what he told me. And I had so many amazing experiences where he'll use his date of birth or he'll show me like his song will come on somebody's phone when I'm just going to sit down. And then straight away I know, oh, your loved one in spirit's a musician. You've got the connections to California, and there'll be random things like that. And I just think it's really amazing. I agree like you. We'd never have been friends in life.
no,
We'd have never, in fact, I remember him saying to me very clearly, we wouldn't have hung around, we wouldn't have been friends. But
Yeah.
it's amazing how I'm fascinated by the way that you trans-channel and you sing with your voice, and I'm interested in the vocals and the soul connection with your voice. And I found it fascinating. And he spent 3 years educating me about music and different bands, and I wouldn't say I'm brilliant at it, but I certainly learned more than I knew before.
Well, do you know, do you remember in Status Quo, you remember when Rick died a few years ago? Again, me and my husband were off to meet some friends in, where were we going? Waltham Abbey. We were going to Waltham Abbey. And I put on Rocking All Over the World, suddenly came on the radio. And I suddenly said to my husband, oh God, I love that. It's a shame about Rick, you know. And next minute he was in the back of the car. That quick, because I'd mentioned his name and he was back in the back of the car. And he showed me that he had his daughter with him, and I think she was called Holly or something. She'd passed, she drowned. Yeah. And he had his daughter with him in the car. It was quick. And, you know, although I tell Spirit, I try to say to them to don't do it. Sometimes what happens, I can be out and someone will come and pester me to go and give a message. So what I do is, if they just won't leave me alone, it means they're desperate to get a message across. So I went, this was in Lanzarote. We were sat having a coffee and this gentleman came in and he showed me that he'd fallen off backwards off a mountain. And there was a young couple, a woman and her husband was in a wheelchair. I remember a young man in a wheelchair, and he went off in his wheelchair. And I thought, I've got to speak to her. This man went. So I just went up to her and I said, look, I am a medium. Are you open to any messages from Spirit? Because I have a gentleman here so desperate to get a message across. And she said, I don't believe in medium. And I said, I'm just going to tell you one thing. This man fell off a mountain backwards and I suddenly saw I got her attention. And she said, yeah. And I said, he's about 5'9". He's got dark brown hair. She said, I know who you're talking about. That is my husband's best friend. And he was there and witnessed him fall. And I said, he's showing me that he missed the link. He missed the link. He was wild and he used to do silly things. She said, yeah. And she said, he missed the link. And he went, whoa, like that. He wasn't connected.
Oh,
And
wow.
he went off the mountain. I described, I said, he said his name's Rob. I said, oh, well, Rob. And she said, yep, that's him. And I said, would you please pass that message on to your husband? Because I just feel he thinks about that so much. And she said, well, he doesn't believe in mediums. And I said to her, well, nor did you 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. There's a power to being invited though, isn't there? You asked permission. I always say to
Yes.
my students,
Yeah.
there's a power to be invited. Don't impose yourself on
Yeah.
somebody.
But then what happened? What happened was, as I was just about to turn around, I said, oh, he just said to tell you he's got Doris with him. And I said, she's a little lady. She's about 5'11", really skinny. I think she had cancer. She's got very, very like pixie short blonde hair, very tanned. And she went, that's his mother. And she said, the reason why we're in Lanzarote now, she said, is because she died 3 weeks ago. And we're here recuperating from, and I mean, what can she say? This is a complete stranger, you know,
Yeah, that's
but she did give me a hug and she,
oh, that's really cool. That's
yeah.
cool. I love that you asked though, because I always say to my students, like, if you're sitting on a bus, please don't just start randomly giving because you can offend
I always
you,
say,
you can
are
offend
you are
somebody.
you open to Spirit? But the way I look at it, you see, they must be pretty desperate to get a message to give some healing to do what he did. That's why I say it doesn't happen very often, but if it does, I will go over and ask them. I just say that I am a medium and I've got a message for you. Are you open to it? Are you open to Spirit? And if they say yes, then I carry on. If they say no, yeah, then I walk away. In her case, even though I said, okay, just want to say Rob fell off a mountain, yeah, and he wants to say hello, yeah. But I feel like he really pushed me. Don't just walk away, because that message of healing to his friend. So I'm hoping she did share that message, because I feel that he really needed to hear from his friend.
That's a valid point, isn't it? We don't often hear the feedback. It's lovely when we get it, but we don't often hear the feedback. So yeah, incredible, Daisy. What an incredible career. And what are your plans over the next? You've just had a grandchild, so what are you?
Oh, so we just had our granddaughter, the fourth granddaughter. So she's 12 weeks old. She was 12 weeks old yesterday. I am actually going to be officially retired, as in, you know, I 90, because it's my year, get the grand old pension. And so what I'm gonna be doing is cutting my readings right down in half. I'm already booking up now for next year. There people are already booking up with me. It tends to be the ones that have had readings with me before and that keep to certain dates. And I've got some new people as well, but it won't be so many as before as I did. I just want to slow down a bit, you know. But I know a very good medium that I can pass them on to if I can't fit them in.
Bless you. Thank you. That's really sweet of you. That's really sweet of you. And done a bit of work together. People have seen us live, the Cat and Daisy show. We've had a little bit
Yes,
of swagger out there and
that was
doing
great,
it
wasn't it?
again. But it's
Yeah,
fun, isn't it? Because we've got very different styles. We bring through very different
yes.
information. And I think that's something important to talk about, actually, because some people say, how do I choose the right medium? How do you know? And I always say, well, go where you energetically feel drawn. Maybe have a look around, go to somebody who's recommended or word of mouth and look for an energetic resonance if you feel that that person's the right personality for you or you'd be comfortable in front of them. Because the more relaxed you are, the easier it's going to be for both of you.
I think also I've had people where they've said, I had a dream of you, Daisy. You came to me and you said you need a reading with me. I said, I did, and another lady, and
Oh,
that was
one of the funniest ones I had is somebody said, I got this poster saying a cat called Bailey's missing. And I was like, that'll be me then.
And so yesterday, the lady I read yesterday, I said to her, young girl sadly lost her sister in childbirth. And she was saying, I said to her, how did you hear about me? Because a lot of them are emails. So, and most people don't, even I don't have my own, well, I do on my Medium page, but on my private page, I don't have our own name. We normally have it made up of something. And I said, you're an email, and that's why I don't know anything where you've come from or anything. And she said to me, she said, actually, you read for a friend of mine 2 years ago before I lost my sister. And I always remembered her saying, if ever you need a reading, you've got to have a reading with Daisy. And she said, what pushed me is my husband came home with a bottle of Daisy Marc Jacobs with the Daisy on it. And it's called Daisy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And she thought, that's weird. And she said, and I was going into a shop, like a trinket shop where they sell cups. And it said Daisy on the cup. And she said, someone's pushing me. She said, Daisy perfume, Daisy cup. And she thought, I'm just going to contact you and went. And I just got a message from her mother and her brother now want a reading with me.
Oh,
Now they will get different readings. That's another good thing. Have you ever noticed that? You can read a mother, but then you could read a sister or brother, and the readings will be completely different. They might have the same energies in, but they have different messages for them.
I've had that where I've done a dem for a family and the relationship with the family is different and therefore
Mm.
relationship. One of my favorite readings was with a real skeptic. He'll know who he is if he's listening in. And I remember it's the only time Spirit have listed 7 siblings and told me the names of those siblings and the relationship that he had to each one of those siblings. And I remember him. And the other thing that was interesting about that reading, Daisy, is that the father from the Catholic Church, who he used to sing at a choir with, also came through. And so it was this really interesting dynamic because he was scared of being sat in front of me because of his religion or his religious beliefs. And yet here was the father who taught him in the choir coming through with the siblings. And I sort of laughed and joked and sort of said, well, you can come more often because I don't think I've ever had this level of detail
Mm.
straight up front the minute somebody sat down. But I think spirit are intelligent, aren't they? When somebody is as highly skeptical as that, and it's meant to be, and there's a healing requirement, which there was in this instance, he'd lost his son. It's very important that they make that connection. And I think you've got the ability to do that. And that makes it much easier for somebody to invest in an hour's reading or a half an hour reading, knowing that you're coming with a strong reputation and ability to do that kind of work. You know, it is important, isn't it, Daisy, that people are experienced. It's important that they've got a good reputation. It's not necessarily important that they've been trained. You haven't been trained. You're a beautiful natural medium, but you've worked very, very hard doing hundreds of readings free of charge and practicing your.
Well, do you know, I actually 1 year, because I was so overburdened with people wanting readings with me, I counted in 1 year, I did 986 readings in 1 year.
Wow.
And I've never done that many since, because I just kept saying, this is getting out of control now, because the more I was doing, and then I wasn't having enough time with my family. And it was like 5 a day. And I thought, I can't keep this up. But there's that part of me, because of knowing what it feels like to lose a child, or you just want to help. But then I thought, I've got to find the balance here. And that's when I started pulling it back. So you say hundreds of readings, I'm going to say thousands of readings over the last God knows how many years, and not all of those are for, I've been paid readings, because I love to do gift readings as well. And 1 year, what we did was we put a load of names in a hat, and I got my then 5-year-old and 7-year-old granddaughters to pick out 6 names live, so they knew it was kids picking it out. And I remember doing that as well.
Oh, that's so lovely. That's so lovely.
I think, what was I going to say to you just now about, you were saying about being taught how to do this. Being taught, I don't know, it's so easy to be taught to do this, because it takes years of experience. It's like, for me, like, we can learn to drive, right? Doesn't make us an instant good driver.
It doesn't make you a Formula One driver, does it?
No, but it takes experience. I mean, the first time you've gone on black ice, it's the most frightening thing. And there's so much you don't learn in a driving lesson, that experience of driving in fog, snow. It's all experience, isn't it? So to me, you can't, I just don't believe that you can just do, say, a 2-week training course. For example, I don't know if people do that, and then say you're a medium, because where's the experience? And I'm watching what you say to people. You've got to have empathy. This is the way I look at it with what I've gone through. I've got the empathy, I've got the understanding, because I've been there, and I know what it feels like, and understanding of people, and I never go looking for work. I always believe, that's why I never advertise. I always believe that people want to read and they come to me. But if someone says, Daisy, I want a reading with you, but I don't believe in this stuff, then I say to them, then don't have a reading. Because if you're going to come in with, you don't believe in it, that's going to make me struggle, because you're going to put up this brick wall. This spirit don't like that. You've got to come in with an open mind. And that's another thing. If I think you do the same, if a reading in the first 10 minutes doesn't work for me, something don't feel right, I will say, I'm going to stop it. I just refund the money. It's a refund. I won't, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work for me.
And
But that,
people don't understand that. I think that is a point that we need to raise. I was talking to a lady last night who I've known about 10 years, and we were talking about our history and our journey. And she said to me, some mediums can't connect. Why is that? And I said, well, it happens to every single medium. And I think if anybody says it doesn't, they're lying, because there are always times when we can't calibrate, not the spirit world's energy, the person in front of them,
it's
because
the person in front of you. Yeah.
it's the human being in front of you. It's the
Yeah.
it's the energy of how they're feeling at the time. If they're nervous and fearful, the spirit world don't want to frighten them. There's a very beautiful healing energy that comes through.
Mm.
Perhaps they come in, there's a difference between skeptical, open skeptical, and cynical, isn't there? If somebody's cynical and they don't want to believe, and they come in with the attitude of, like, I don't even know why I'm here, it's a waste of their time, it's a waste of ours, because you're not going to get the information through.
But it's still very rare for me. I've probably done it twice in 4 years. It's still rare for me to do that. But I always say to people, if it doesn't work out, I always say,
I agree.
and let's face it,
Two or three times a year, it will
Yeah.
happen, won't it? 2 or 3 times a year, it will happen. And a good medium will acknowledge and say, I'm really sorry, the connection isn't right. They
yeah,
won't.
because no one is going to do a full hour unless they've got the connection. Because because that person's going to say, no, that doesn't make sense. You know, it don't make sense. If someone's gonna do a whole hour, then it's worked. But if
But some people do, Daisy. Some people will take the money and they will do blame the sitter for their inability to connect, and they will claim that it's the problem is the person in front of them, and that is very rarely the case. It could be that the medium's coming down with a viral infection that they're not aware of at the moment. It could be that they're overtired. Susan Giesman talks about how she was dehydrated one day and couldn't get a connection because she hadn't drunk enough fluid.
or emotional, if you're emotional, something's going on, in your life. But, if I have a stomach problem, I have a headache or something going on, I actually contact them and say, "I'm sorry, but I'm not well today." I offer them a full refund. They don't normally, they just say, "Oh, let's just do another day." And then I find another slot. Yeah. And because I say to them, I want to work at 100%, not 50%. I want to give you the best reading. So please, I don't feel well and I can't, I know I can't do this if I feel like this. Again, it's rare that it happens, but you just got to be
It's
honest.
better to be honest, isn't
Be
it?
honest. Yeah.
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 Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming, Daisy. It's incredible
That's all right.
to you. And I know there are so many people that follow you and have supported you through these years. Anything you want to say to them while we're on?
I love my followers. I always let them know how much I appreciate them. And they do the same with me as well. I've got lovely messages, lovely fans. I mean, on my Facebook page alone, I think there's over 7,000 on that page, and it's just lovely. And I try and wish them happy birthday when it's their birthdays. I can't always do everybody, but they pop up and I wish everybody happy birthday and do like hearts and stuff for people as well. Just to let people know that I appreciate them just as much as they appreciate me. You know.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So let's just wish everybody love and light, shall we? I was going to say a lovely weekend, but it isn't. I'm going ahead of myself here because it's Friday tomorrow. But hey, it's crunchy day tomorrow. It's Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. You'll have the most amazing weekend. Thank you so much for coming, Daisy. It's awesome to see you, my darling.
Lots of love. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.